walking past each other. Make sure your drinks are covered. We'll get started in just a minute. And we'll let you know what we're going to do, and we'll introduce ourselves and all that kind of stuff. Where are you all from? There's a chat little piece there, and if you want to add what your role is, and what you teach, or where you're from, what school or what have you, that would be lovely. I will start by saying I'm in Rochester, New York, which is shockingly nice today. And Julie, where are you?
I'm in North Carolina, and it's a beautiful day here too.
Yes, and it was pouring yesterday. We needed the rain, but that's going to make me have to go cut the grass before too long. I know this is not the small talk you came for, but we just want to give people another minute to come in. Maysville, Kentucky, welcome. Taylor University, awesome. Run Blackboard and teach for the business department. Cloudy day in Northwest Georgia. I don't always like to ask about, where people are from and what the weather is. Pizza toppings or favorite ice cream is another one that I like to use, because that's more interesting, I think. I mean, not more interesting, just slightly more interesting. Oh, Scott Snell says hi, Julie. Hi, Scott. I'm going to say hi to you too, man.
Scott Snell is the bomb.
Yes, he is. Can't disagree with that. Morehead State, Grambling State. Fantastic. Philadelphia, that's where Yellowdig is based. I used to live right by Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, honestly. All right, so we're at 102 and you all are here, so I think you deserved for us to get started. So we will serve you by getting started now. As you hopefully know, the name of this session is Empowering Your Learners Through Community Building in Yellowdig. And if I can make the slide switch, well, let's introduce ourselves. I'll start, Julie, just because I'm already babbling away. I'm Bob Ertischek. I'm Yellowdig's Senior Community Success Consultant. I've been with Yellowdig for 2.5 years, loving every minute of it. The reason I'm here talking to you today is because of my background. I came to Yellowdig before the turn of the century. I didn't come to Yellowdig before the turn of the century, but before the turn of the century, I moved on from a career in law as a lawyer to teaching in higher education, and really enjoyed that experience. After doing that for some time, I became, in 2001, an instructional technologist, faculty developer, vetting educational technology, and also working at that time to help instructors 20 plus years ago put their courses online, whether that was distance learning straight from VHS tapes, or even then 20 years ago, we were experimenting with blended and hybrid learning. And while I thought the promise of online learning was pretty much limitless, I was very disappointed in the student experience that the tools and the pedagogy created at the time, and it made me frustrated in my job. So I went back to teaching, and I taught political science for over a decade after that. In my own courses, I stayed away from your sort of ed techy tools and tried all kinds of weird experiments on my own to create a better student experience. And they came with their own set of problems. So when I found Yellowdig, it's what I had been looking for all that time. And now I work with our partners to help them get the most out of it regarding, related to pedagogy and best practices, all that kind of thing. And today I'm joined by Julie Moss from Missouri Southern State University. Julie, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. I teach for Missouri Southern State University, and I've taught psychology for over 15 years. And a lot of that time has been spent with distance learning. And then I also have a background in student services, so kind of know that side of things as well. I got introduced to Yellowdig, and I am thrilled with teaching online. We're always looking for ways to interact with students. So I think this is such a great tool.
All right. So thanks, Julie. And we're going to have a fun conversation. Most of you have answered that question already, but if you want to add, feel free to put more in the chat. Oh, and there's a little poll that popped up. Who knew? I didn't know that. I mean, Bree mentioned it, but I don't know. I'm going to move on from that, unfortunately, because of time. I just want to get to the other stuff. But again, please feel free to put in the chat where you're from, And I'll try to make that thing. So let's talk a little bit about Yellowdig. What is Yellowdig? Yellowdig is a learning community tool and pedagogy that is designed to give students more agency and allow them to share their own experiences and what they see that's in regard to course relevance in the course concept, in the course context. What we're looking at right here is a diagram of the community of inquiry framework, which some of you may be familiar with. It purports to share what students need to succeed. And there are three fundamental pieces of that, according to this framework. The first is the teaching presence, the idea that you and I are in front of our courses, or in front of our classes, providing that structure, process, information to students, effectively having that one-to-many conversation and that many-to-one conversation, with us, basically, really framing all the discussions and having everything be at our direction. Very little student agency in that part of the deal. The cognitive presence is the idea that students on their own are reading a textbook, or perhaps they're doing a written assignment, just reflecting on the material on their own, thinking about it and all that kind of stuff, making it real to themselves. And then finally, there's the idea of the social presence, the idea that perhaps we have things to learn from each other, that students should be part of this process and they have their own real life experiences and they see what's happening in the world related to these course concepts, that they have questions that they want to ask, they have answers that they want to give, and different perspectives. For example, if I'm in Julie's class and all of you are in Julie's class and we all hear her say the same thing, I'm sure it was clear and we got it, but when we talk to each other, maybe we get a little bit more information, like there's a perspective that Bree has that I didn't have, and when we talk about it together, we have it. So that social presence is so important, but sadly, and I hate to use that term, but sadly, we often either assume that it exists where it doesn't, or we just ignore it completely. And two real quick examples of that are in a face-to-face or a synchronous session like this, we're together for a very limited period of time each week, right? But we think we're together, that must be the social presence, right? We're all in the room together for 50 minutes, 3 times a week. But in reality, that is much more of the teaching presence, where I am controlling that conversation entirely. I'm choosing who to call on. And frankly, I'm probably only getting those kids in the front row, or maybe an occasional kid behind that or something like, I mean, students, I shouldn't say kids. There's not really the opportunity for students to fully, all of them, bring in those experiences or ask the questions that they want that might be slightly different than what I'm focused on or something like that. So that social presence isn't really there in those live sessions that we're together with students, generally speaking. And in sort of discussion board, oops, where did it go? I'm sorry, I'm looking for a slide that I don't see, but I'll talk about it anyway. In a discussion board type of pedagogy, again, that social presence, that post once, comment twice, where the instructor gives a weekly post every Monday morning at 9 a.m. and requires students to respond to that post by Sunday at midnight, and then reply to 2 of their peers' posts who have written to the exact same post. That also isn't exactly a social experience. Everyone's writing to the instructor, and the responses that they give to each other are usually like, I agree, well said. I call that post and run. Julie, do you have any experience with that?
Yes, I've experienced that even just this week. I know we're all, semesters are starting, and teaching in, I feel like I have a unique perspective of teaching classes that both use Yellowdig, and then I teach some classes that do not use Yellowdig. And just even the amount of engagement and connectivity I can get with students using Yellowdig, the software is it's intuitive, and it seems to be very natural for students to do some back and forth interaction versus traditional discussion boards where it doesn't feel as intuitive, and it just seems a little more static. Like the thing I really like about Yellowdig is how fluid it can be with those communications.
Excellent. Julie, in your introduction, I'm not sure that you mentioned exactly what courses you teach. Maybe that'd be worthwhile real quick.
Yeah, I teach psychology.
Awesome. So we'll come back to the slides if we need them, but I know, people don't always love to see slides the whole time, so we'll move on that. And I just wanted to ask you, Julie, I believe that your courses are 100% asynchronous. Is that correct?
They are. Yeah.
So what do you, when you're teaching, and what are some of the pros and cons of those asynchronous courses and that experience for you?
So I do love teaching asynchronously because I think it's very student friendly. We have so many students who they work full time, they have family responsibilities, and I think it's important to for them to have the flexibility to log on and complete coursework when they're able to. And then as an instructor, I also enjoy that flexibility. But the downside of that is I think it's sometimes difficult to get some like genuine interaction. And I think that's where Yellowdig comes in. Having a background with student services as well, like we know how important connecting with each other and creating that community is. And I found that really difficult with traditional discussion boards. I've tried, a while back, I saw as social media started to grow, I saw that was a great opportunity and tried to kind of create that on my own. And then but there were some pitfalls with that as well. So I really when I heard about Yellowdig, I thought this could be like a game changer in connecting students who are asynchronous, because we all need connection, even if we're not all logged in at the same time.
So Julie, just walk us back a few steps. Before you were using Yellowdig, and we appreciate all the nice things you're saying about Yellowdig. Before you were using Yellowdig, what was that student experience, your experience engaging them, and that all of that like for you?
Yeah. Well, using traditional discussion boards, we kind of know how students get onto a discussion board. They'll post something and then they don't always circle back to go check that. So when like Facebook came to light, I attempted to do like a Facebook group, but some of the pitfalls of that were not everyone had a Facebook page. There was also I also felt I didn't have like the control I wanted in a class. I wanted to like protect my students' privacy as well. It's just, there were a lot of pitfalls where I saw how it could be really beneficial, but I couldn't quite get there on my own.
I also used that Facebook idea of finding a way to engage students where they were living at the time. Now, I don't think Facebook is quite the thing it was for people, students these days, but nevertheless, I did feel like I don't want to ask students to have to join this where I don't know what's happening to their data and all that kind of stuff. So right. I totally get that. Plus, like you said, you don't really have any data about what's going on behind the scenes with your students in that regard. So you found out about Yellowdig, and how did you find out about Yellowdig?
The university I teach for added it to their digital backpack. And I'll be honest with you, when I first, anytime there's a new technology, sometimes I'm hesitant because it takes a lot of time to learn. Sometimes, it's difficult sometimes to change your course or just change the way you've always done things. But I saw a need that I'd sit down to do grading every week, and I'd kind of have to give myself a pep talk as I was grading 40 of the same discussion prompts. And quite honestly, I felt like maybe I was wasting my students' time by getting some artificial interaction. And it sometimes felt honestly disrespectful of my time. I felt like we were all just kind of circling around trying to make something happen, but it wasn't happening very well.
And yeah, no, I mean, I don't think that's unique, but you did mention, you worry when you're starting to use something new in your course, that it's going to be difficult because you haven't used it before. You want to share what that was like with Yellowdig?
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I really like I said, it's difficult. It feels risky when you take on new technology and you're like, how's this going to work? For me, I'm a very type A personality. It was difficult for me to kind of like, with Yellowdig, it honestly it can take on a life of its own in a good way. And it was, it was hard for me to like let go of the reins. And, but what I love about it, yeah, is that students get a lot of control also. I mean, as instructors, you have ultimate control, but it's a lot of student-led interactions, which I love.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, it's not funny you say it. It's appropriate that you say that. That is one of the things about Yellowdig that's very different. It is not, like we said before, that teaching presence where the instructor is creating every conversation. So sometimes instructors are used to that and feel like, well, I don't want to allow my students just to go where they want to go. So was that difficult for you to deal with? How did you loosen your grip on the reins, I suppose, is the way to say it.
Well, my goal with teaching like a general psychology class, my goal is, I mean, we're going to learn the information best if we can apply it to our own lives and in ways that are meaningful to us. And things that are meaningful to me may not be the same that are meaningful to my students. So I love the flexibility again, it did feel risky at first, but then I started seeing students like recognize concepts out in their real world in ways that were, could be applied to their career or their major or even their life. One example is I had a student in a previous semester talk about anime a lot. Well, I'm not familiar with anime, but they were able to relate, concepts they were learning about in class to a topic that was familiar with them and meaningful to them. So I think it does a great job in really allowing students to tailor how they can apply the information to their own life.
So let me just dive into that a little, dig into that is what I should say, Yellowdig, deeper into that. So the student was able to make the connection between this anime idea and a particular piece of content, a concept in the course.
Yes, and then other students started to join in who were also involved in anime, and it just created. It was an interesting interaction that I wouldn't have gotten from a typical discussion board. I feel like.
Oh, cool.
We see a lot of that. Students are always, like they like to share their experiences, and their student experiences are an untapped resource. I think we miss out a lot on.
And actually, I was just pulling that up, Bree, but thank you. So you want to walk us through what we're looking at here, Julie?
Yeah, this is just an old post of a student where they can share, I thought this was interesting, where they can share their personal experiences if they want to. I think there's just a lot of value in that. A lot of times, we all can think about students in our classes have different levels of comfort sharing information. So I always encourage my students to share, and then they can kind of have a great chat about those experiences. And if students don't want to share necessarily personal information or experiences, I think there's other ways they can connect. They can link up, a news article they found interesting that's kind of related to content. There's a lot of different ways where students can share information.
Yeah, and I want to just point out a few things. What we're looking at is redacted screenshots from Yellowdig. No student information being shown or anything like that. But so Yellowdig resembles social media. In fact, we don't have it in these examples, but there is the ability to bring in images or videos or web links or files or anything, and all of those things into a single particular post or anything like that. And then you'll notice at the top of the post, there is a little blue icon there called what we call a topic tag, which really creates the structure of the course and guides those student conversations. They're compelled, they're required by our defaults to add one of those to when they're creating a post, so that context is always there and they have to think a little bit about what they're bringing into the community. And on top of that, you'll see that Julie awarded this person an accolade. What's an accolade, Julie, from your perspective anyway?
An accolade is it's a digital sticker like we used to get on our papers in grade school, but it's just a way to reward high quality postings. And I kind of do that to model to other students, to kind of pinpoint like, this is what I'm looking for. It's just a way to draw attention and reinforce high quality postings.
Yeah. So again, that is entirely the purpose of those accolades. And by the way, Yellowdig has a gameful learning system that motivates students to come in and create better conversations, than, that they're be motivated by this point system, this gameful learning system. And these accolades also have a point value. So they are a powerful tool for you with one click as an instructor to say, this is what I want from you students. It's a great way to model, and they'll all see that. So thank you for that. All right. So
as I was building my classes this semester, it dawned on me how many tools we use that we can automate, right? Like we have quizzes that can automatically be graded. We have, we can deploy certain modules at certain times. And there's a lot of tools out there that, involve, a student taking action. So there's a lot of, but what we're missing, I feel like sometimes it's easy to escape like personal interactions, and I think Yellowdig does a great job of, we can make our courses very interactive, but we need to have those interactions with our students. And I really love that when I'm using Yellowdig, it's not just sitting down to grade if a student completed something or not. You can actually I spend my time interacting with them instead of just grading them. And I think they appreciate that.
Yeah, and I assume, you mentioned that anime conversation and this conversation in general, you maybe you're even learning a little bit from your students here too.
Every day. Yes.
Yeah. And beyond that, for your students, this provides a connection that they may not have had in another part, to the institution, to the course, to the concepts, and really, I mean, it keeps them around. It keeps them engaged, and they're less likely to fail or to leave the institution because they feel like they're.
Yeah, it's so easy to kind of, I always remind my students there's a person on the other side of the screen, especially when we're asynchronous and we don't see each other face to face. It can feel very robotic. And the thing I like about Yellowdig is it just helps bring that interaction with each other back.
Julie, teaching a psychology course, there are lots of opportunities for people to share their experiences with various aspects of the material, because most of us have, we're alive and we have, psychology. Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty, but it's not always comfortable to be sharing those experiences in Yellowdig. And I don't even know if you know this, but Yellowdig, maybe we talked about this, allows anonymous posting, which allows for students to go deeper. But before we comment on that, I want to point out, though, that it is not entirely anonymous. In other words, students aren't going to do bad behaviors because of this anonymous posting, because they will know, and you will know, they will know that that it's them posting. So what you're able to do, though, is get out, by using this, some of those stories, some of those experiences, also those questions that students feel like, this is a dumb question, I don't want to ask it, but anonymously they can, and really it's probably the same question that a million other students have.
Right. I am just using that anonymous feature this semester. I've not used it before, but I'm really excited about it. Like you said, I think people are going to be much more open to sharing and create a safer environment. And you brought up something about I forget, but like safety. And I remember when I was trying to let go of the reins a little, my need for control reins a little bit, wondering if, students were going to if I were going to have issues with students being difficult in class or posting things that were inappropriate. And I have to say, I'm really impressed with how on task my students stay. And there's a lot of like safety features built in Yellowdig where students can flag posts if they don't feel like it's appropriate. I was really pleased with those kind of features because I worry about that stuff.
Absolutely. And this post that we're sharing, this post in the comments that go with it, I mean, I think this is amazing. A student is basically sharing something that's really personal here with the rest of the community at the outset, and then the peers are supporting that student and sharing their own experiences.
Exactly.
You know? Right, you don't get that in a discussion board, I don't think.
And it's and especially something, and so often we think we're the only ones struggling with something, or even if it's not related to psychology, if it's just a struggling with a certain part of the content, and I think it's really helpful to know we're not in it alone.
Beyond the sort of ability of students to interact in that regard, on that one in particular, they were talking about this concept in the course. Do you feel like there was learning going on beyond the sharing?
Oh, definitely. That's what I really like about Yellowdig is that students can kind of tailor the content, what they're taking, and make it meaningful. I think I miss walking into class and students tell you things, and then we can observe, we can relate so much of our life to especially like my content area. So it just feels like very organic when a student would come in and mention something and we could tie it back to something we've already covered or something we will cover.
So you've sort of mentioned that, you've actually had community basically form in your Yellowdig courses. And, did you see that right away? How did you sort of encourage that to happen? And how long did it take, I guess, to some degree?
Well, I think one thing that you have to work on the front end is modeling what you want. And I don't want to say Yellowdig is vague. It's very flexible, which I think is a great asset, but for students, that's something I think that they're not always familiar with. So how I do that is I have them do student introductions the first week, just so they can get familiar with the format and how points are accumulated. And then I will start to post, make model posts, either attaching content or just saying, oh, I experienced this, or even post saying, oh, I struggled with this material when I was in school, how's everyone doing? And then they can all just kind of chime in, and they kind of get the idea of of what the tool's used for.
Yeah, and so you do that modeling up front, and then they know what to expect, and you set expectations going in, because this is not a discussion board. This is a little bit different. Beyond that, though, posting isn't the only thing that you do in the community. We already talked about the accolades, but another thing that you can do in the community is to extend conversations simply by commenting. Did you take part in any of that?
Oh yeah, yes. That's what I do love about Yellowdig the most, is when students share, you can keep a conversation going. And just the back and forth seems a little easier. I know with traditional discussion boards, of course I would require 2 response posts, but those always seemed a little like disingenuous when students would just write something to write something and never circle back. Where I really like how Yellowdig, it kind of alerts you when someone comments on your post. It incentivizes comments. It incentivizes students to put like high quality content, meaning not to just put like a single statement, but to expand on an article or expand on an experience.
Excellent point. And, here's an example of Julie extending a conversation by adding her own thoughts. And rather than saying great post or something like that, which would kill the conversation, she spurs it off into, an extension. Let's see. So all that being said, you did mention that in Yellowdig, commenting is valued more highly than posting on a word by word basis. In other words, we're not interested in that performative posting where everyone posts the same thing, 52 conversations all starting.
Right. That's not enjoyable for anyone.
and it's not, or it doesn't really lead to reading deeply or people to go in further. What we're doing is giving people ways to earn their Yellowdig points. If the conversation they're already interested in has started, they still have an avenue to get there. Or maybe they're not comfortable starting a conversation. They don't know how to start it or something like that. And so when we put the emphasis on commenting, we're really going to find deeper conversations. And I'm glad that you were able to share some of that with us. You know, how did you keep students on topic, so to speak?
Yep. Well, a feature in Yellowdig is to have topic tags. So I kind of used that as a way to keep, again, I want it to be a flexible space, but we also want the space to be used for, you know, academic purposes. We're here to discuss psychology and different areas of psychology. So I require students to use a topic tag so they can at least, you know, even if it's loosely related, connect that back to the textbook. And then it also has a great feature where students can search for previous posts. And I thought that was a great way for students to even, you know, review before an exam. They could search for a post using those topic tags and find a lot of like content that had been linked regarding that chapter.
Yeah, those topic tags we saw in an earlier slide, they provide context to every post, you know, going in what you're looking at or what the subject matter in that post is going to be. And as Julie just pointed out, they're also filters. Simply clicking on a topic tag will narrow the feed in Yellowdig to show only those conversations related to that topic tag. Great way to
I love that Yellowdig offers, not every interaction is instructor led. You know, I'm one person, and I love that students can start their own interactions and have those conversations without, I mean, you know, instructor presence is very important in Yellowdig. I check in several times a week in the tool, but they don't have to discuss necessarily what I want to discuss. As long as they're staying like on task and related to psychology, you know, I think we can learn from all those discussions. If we just stay strictly on track, you know, we're going to miss out on a lot of valuable information too. So I really like that those interactions are happening and they're not dependent on my presence.
And beyond that, you know, I think that, well, I don't think that those topics really provide a lot of flexibility. And for those instructors who aren't entirely ready to give up all control, some flexibility as far as that goes as well, in that in the settings for topics, there's at any time an instructor can create focus on any particular topic simply by putting it at the forefront of the list of topics that students have, or disabling a topic for a period of time, or even creating a no point topic so students can have organic discussions outside of the course context.
Yeah, I think we can both have organic discussions and then also guide students into certain topics. So I had, you know, one semester I had students, you know, psychology, they all think of mental health. Well, psychology encompasses so much more than mental health. And I wanted to make sure they weren't, you know, just
stuck on that,
focused on that.
Yeah.
So while I think mental health conversations are super important to have, really interesting, that's where like the accolades come in, where when a student, when we were covering biopsychology and a student posts about the topic of the week, you know, that's a great time to use an accolade where you can reward students for, you can kind of guide them into discuss, if there's not a topic, you can guide them into embracing all topics of the class, not just the ones maybe they're most familiar with.
So yeah, the topics are super flexible, but you know what, you brought me back to another piece about your role in the community and your time commitment. I see there's a question in the chat about how many students you have do you usually have in a class?
I usually have, I'm going to guess between 30 and 40 students per class. So okay. Again, if you're using traditional discussion boards, that is a time commitment. That is reading, you know, sometimes the same prompt over and over again. It's not enjoyable. Again, it's not enjoyable on the instructor side. Frankly, I don't feel like it's very valuable on the student side to be reading, you know, the same, you know, similar content each time. It just feels like not a good use of student time. And our students are so busy. You know, I really want the time they spend in class to be rewarding to them, you know.
So 30 to 40 students, and that's a great number. We do have Yellowdig communities that are very strong, very successful communities that are over 1,000 students as well. So, you know, the Yellowdig does really, it's very scalable, or it can be very, you know, intimate, to so to speak. And 30 or 40 students is a great number for a Yellowdig community because it can sustain itself. There's enough students in there to do that. But let's get back to your role and your workload, so to speak, in the community. You know, we tell instructors, as part of our best practices, that, and you should communicate this to students, that you're not required, you as the instructor, to read every single post in Yellowdig and every single comment. You know, the Yellowdig feed, the algorithm works to promote the most recent conversations and also those conversations that have the newest comments on them. So basically, every time somebody comes into Yellowdig, they're going to see something interesting, new, and engaging to them as well. And that goes the same thing for the instructor. So, you know, we usually suggest that instructors consume the feed the same way they would consume their LinkedIn feed or their Facebook feed. You know, sit with a cup of coffee, scroll through it, award the occasional accolade when you feel it's necessary or worthwhile to model that behavior, or comment to extend a conversation, or maybe post something that you found of interest in the, you know, related to the course concepts. How was your experience related to the workload of Yellowdig?
Yeah, I really, you know, Yellowdig, again, it feels like a risk when you're taking on a new tool. Setting it up took less than 20 minutes at the start of the semester, and it saves, I want to say, you know, it saves a tremendous amount of frustrating time. I say frustrating time because, you know, I'm still very interactive in the class, but those interactions are more meaningful when you can comment, besides grading through 40 different of the same topic. You know, I noticed like someone commented on not only do they learn better, they learn different and deeper. And I think that is so important. Again, our classes can be so automated, and what sets, you know, what helps create a community is that like personal interaction our students can have with each other.
So you know, my impression then is that the workload is perhaps a little bit lighter, but at the very least much more engaging,
much more enjoyable. Yes, yeah. And our students are learning when you're not present. Like I'm not in charge of controlling what everyone is learning. You know, I present the material, and then I love that students can kind of take that material and expand on it and share experiences, and then others can read about other people's experiences. You know, we can learn statistics all day long. I'll give you an example of, like, you know, we can read about, let's say, food insecurity, and we can learn about statistics about food insecurity. But it's going to hit different when, you know, I didn't grow up with food insecurity, so I don't really, you know, I know I might know the statistics. I don't, but if someone who has had food insecurity can chime in and tell us what it's really like, that's going to hit different. And that is where real learning takes place. And I think that, like, that kind of information is what sticks with us down the road, more than learning, you know,
unquestionably,
a statistic. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I even in my own teaching, I've had those experiences where I was, you know, had a group of students who had a very different background than I did, and you know, their perspective really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and because I allowed them to share their perspective and encourage them to do that, and you know, it seems like you're sort of taking the same tack here.
I really feel Yellowdig is one of those tools where students will get out what they put into it. So are there going to be students who I will say are there going to be students who maybe don't appreciate Yellowdig, because it is a forced interaction. I mean, I assign points for it, but it's like if students are willing to put in high quality interactions, I think they get so much out of it. I just think the sharing component is really important, and it's really something like lacking in a lot of the asynchronous classes. We're more than just checking off boxes of assignments.
I mean, I think sometimes that students that, who find it to be, why am I doing this? The assignments that you're giving them are forced interactions too, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But these create meaningful interactions, I feel like, opposed to, with the old school discussion boards I would use felt just not genuine. They were just checking a box, and these, I feel like students can actually like dive into each other's stories and support each other, or sometimes they challenge each other, which is also really important. A class where everyone agrees with each other is not productive.
Exactly.
And
I mean, that's another thing that you can model disagreement, respectful disagreement. And I think that is a really great thing that you can find in Yellowdig. I got just a few more questions, and I know that we want to share how Yellowdig integrates with Blackboard, so that we can show you what that looks like as well. It's a very easy process, but I do have just a few more questions before we get to that, Julie. So, you talked about that you enjoy being in the Yellowdig community and reading, the student posts and comments and seeing all that stuff and all that wonderful stuff. But do you find that the Yellowdig community, the information that students are sharing, the conversations, they inform your teaching? In other words, you would make adjustments based on what you're seeing in the Yellowdig community?
1,000%. And I have a great example for that. So one class I teach is lifespan development. And also when we cover, conditioning and learning in general psychology, I remember, we were covering that material, and I had posted an article about spanking, like views on spanking. I think what I love about Yellowdig is you can take like content that is like current event, and you can post it and have a great discussion, kind of spur of the moment. But I posted an article about spanking and kind of asked students their thoughts, and I was shocked at the number of students who said, yes, I'll probably, I was surprised at how many said they were going to choose to spank their children. And I, of course, wanted to be very respectful of everyone's opinions, but it was apparent to me that they had maybe missed some of the key parts of the textbook about how, positive reinforcement is such a better tool for discipline than, than spanking or punishment. So that gave me, as I was reading that stuff, I thought, okay, I've gone wrong somewhere, and I need to correct this and let them know, redirect them back to the textbook about how much more effective, reinforcements are than punishments. So it kind of gave me an insight that I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Awesome. And I mean, I think that is a fantastic example. There's also incredible data in Yellowdig related to the concepts that people are speaking about, or the actual individual interactions of each student and the points they've earned, or how many comments they've given. There's a great deal that you can see in there to inform your teaching. For example, if students are focusing on one particular topic, maybe you can move on from that topic. Maybe you can change that focus and get them talking about something else. Or you can look at, the data to see how, who are your subject matter experts, who is spending the most time on this, and maybe, emerge that into another element of the class. I mean, the Yellowdig community is not designed and shouldn't exist in a vacuum, but there's so much data there for an instructor, and that's why we encourage people to think of it in terms of perhaps a participation grade. I mean, the value that I got out of a high participation grade in the courses that I taught was, yes, I want the students to learn and interact and all that kind of stuff, but also it was for me. It helped me know where they were. And I think that Yellowdig can do the sort of the same thing as far as that goes.
Right.
just looking at the chat for a second, another great comment from Peter. I think perhaps now, I know we're getting to the end of the time here. Probably a good time to look at how Blackboard works with Yellowdig, and maybe a quick look at Yellowdig. Just give me a second so I can get to where I need to be, and I'll share a screen. In the meantime, Julie, any other comments that you want to add before I manage that? You've been using Blackboard with Yellowdig. How is that integration for you?
Right. Yeah, the integrations is really easy for students. You know, there's no extra logins they need to keep track of. I simply have a Yellowdig link on my Blackboard site. So they click on the Yellowdig link. It takes them directly to our to the Yellowdig site. I like that the feed's constantly refreshing as new students post. The thing I like about this tool, you know, is that it seems mutually beneficial. When I poll my students at the end of class, you know, I ask them their thoughts on Yellowdig, and I get rave reviews over students who have done more traditional discussion boards. They really seem to like the interaction and the sharing component. I mean, people love talking about themselves. They love sharing experiences. I think they can just really connect to the material better through the back and forth interaction that Yellowdig provides that more traditional discussion boards don't.
Awesome. And, you know, so I assume we're looking at Blackboard now. Can you see it on my screen?
Yes, it looks like a Blackboard course.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't showing something else, you know. So you know, Blackboard, you create a link that is linked to your gradebook as an assignment. And what happens is through LTI, students click on the link, they're populated into the Yellowdig community, and it also establishes the grade passback. So if I'm going to, you know, launch a Yellowdig community, it's going to launch either inside or outside of Blackboard. We would encourage outside of Blackboard, and it's just that simple as far as that goes. So just want to demonstrate that, and it will launch in a minute. Oh, there's more stuff in the chat. I'm just looking really quickly. All right, so and it just launches into the Yellowdig community. I'm actually going to share a different community to sort of show around for just a second, if you don't mind. Just take a second here to do that. And you know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the community, but we've talked about Yellowdig a lot, so it seems reasonable to show people what it looks like. And this one I've just blown up a little bit more, so it's easier to see. So Yellowdig is a single scrolling feed that resembles social media, but again, it's not social media. It's a community under your control, the instructor control. The point system, as we mentioned, motivates students to come into the community and to create better conversations. And again, the topic tags we were talking about, keep them course relevant as you want. But you can also, like we mentioned, create areas for them to have non-course discussions that will not achieve points. And those accolades that Julie was mentioning, they're so easy. You click a button and there they are. You give it. You have shown presence. You're in the community. The students know it. They know what you're looking for. And all you had to do is one click. It's not a bad way to go as far as that goes. We've got about 10 minutes left, I think. Julie, I'm going to stop that at the moment. What would you say to instructors who've been listening to this and they're like, you know, it sounds interesting, but it's going to be a huge, you know, what would you say to instructors who are considering using Yellowdig or maybe hadn't heard of it before?
Yeah, I do get the risk. It feels like a risk. And I found the payoff to be so the risk of doing something new and uncomfortable. It's such a great payoff on the end, again, because it's like mutually beneficial. I mean, it's, you know, we've talked a lot about how it's beneficial for the student, but it's also beneficial to the instructor. And, you know, we know the research says about like the importance of community. And I just feel like that is something that's, as we're moving more towards online learning, we're moving more towards asynchronous learning, because our students, you know, gone are the days where a student's full-time job was being a student. They're so busy with so many, you know, they're just a lot of them just trying to, not them, a lot of us are just trying to make it, right? So it's important to be respectful of their time. And I feel like using Yellowdig is such a better use of our time together. And everyone's an expert at something, right? Like we can, and if we're not, and we may not feel like that, but we all can be like an expert of our own experiences and share that, and just learn from each other. I just think it's such an untapped resource who our students, all they bring to the table.
I mean, that's our motto, learn together. Learn together is the Yellowdig motto.
So I'm sorry, I got off track there, but
no, I think that was
time to set up like I was skeptical of the risk as well, because it's, sometimes I think if we've been in like higher education a long time, it seems like you're an old dog getting taught new tricks, and you're not sure what it's going to shake out like. It's such a time saver it's just such a time saver, and just creates such a more genuine interaction with your students.
Awesome. And one other thing, you made me think of one other thing there when you were talking about, the student experience. And, we have students who are first generation students who have English not as their first language. And, I understand that you're teaching totally asynchronously, but in certain contexts, it's very difficult for those students to be a part of the class as a whole, because they're uncomfortable doing that. In Yellowdig, they have the opportunity to edit their posts before they put them there, make sure that they're how they want them to be. Sometimes in a synchronous session, students don't want to raise their hand, even though they have an answer, because they want to formulate what they're going to say first.
Right.
And
I recently saw a meme that said, if an instructor asks a question and they pause, they're like, I'm not, I know the answer, I'm just nervous. And that, that resonated with me, because that's something I would have thought, don't think I don't know the material. I'm just trying to like gather my thoughts. And where Yellowdig allows you that time to gather those thoughts. And then you can post when you're ready. And then you receive it, like, I don't want to say immediate feedback, but it's rewarding to post, and then other people post back, or they give you a thumbs up, or when your instructor comments back and says, I see what you're posting, I see your effort, just to acknowledge their willingness to share and put their information out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. We're getting near the end of our time, so we certainly would like to ask if there are any questions. We'd be happy to address them in the few short minutes that we have. And before we leave, we want to share with you some future webinars that our CEO, Shauna Croy, is doing with thought leaders in higher education related to connected learning, and we'll do that in a moment. Are there any questions? Feel free to pop them in the chat. And if there aren't any questions, that's fine too. If this was a Yellowdig community, you could wait until later and put them in the chat, and we would be happy to answer them later. Thank you, Scott. It was great to sort of virtually see you here. All right, I'm going to put up the other screen, and if with that link to those sessions, and they've been really well received sessions so far. We had Dr. Karen Vignari speaking just the other day. She's from the American Public Land Grant Universities, or Association of Public Land Grant Universities. She was speaking about personalized learning. I know there have been a few others that have been really well received as well. And I'm looking forward to the next set of webinars. And you can just point your phone at that scan me button, and it'll take you right to, I assume, the sign up page there. And I also see that there might be some stuff in the chat, so I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. So yes, we have the link in there as well. Here, I'm going to go back a slide to, you know what? I think I have to refresh the link here. There it is. Give me a minute.
I've been really impressed with the tool. I think whoever developed it, I think, was spot on with seeing how it's not a social media site, I get that, but seeing how that is what our incoming students are often very familiar with. So it feels like it oddly feels safe to students, I think, because it's something they're already familiar with and less intimidating than maybe a traditional discussion. It just seems to flow so much better. That is one of the most valuable things I think about Yellowdig is how again, just how like organic that conversation can become between students connecting with each other and even students connecting with an instructor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie, for
Thank
all of
you.
your insights and your time commitment to doing this, because I know it's the beginning of the semester for not only for you, but for our people in the audience
Everyone.
too. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. If you do have questions, you can absolutely reach out to us. I'm Yellowdig sort of lead on the pedagogy and side of the coin, but I can certainly point you in the direction of the people who can talk about how you can get set up at your particular institution. And you can reach out to me at bob@yellowdig.com. That's BOB@yellowdig.com. It's not that hard to spell. I didn't put my last name on purpose, and I'll put it in the chat as well. And thank you. Beat me to the punch again. And if there are no more questions, I think we will let you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And again, Julie, sincere thanks. It's been a pleasure. And have a great semester, everybody.